Welcome back to NASCAR Lap by Lap with me, Garon Bach. We're going to take a look back at the Coca-Cola 600 weekend, look ahead at Nashville, and then I'm going to give you some of my best bets looking into the upcoming weekend at Nashville Superspeedway. I spent some time out in Charlotte, went to all four races, and was there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Had a very enjoyable time, and overall, I think it was the best race of the season, maybe one of the best races ever produced at the track. I'm in a new background. I'm staying in East Tennessee right now as I'm traveling in between Charlotte and then Nashville this upcoming weekend. But as always, I like to get right into it and let's take a look at the results from the Charlotte weekend. Starting off, we all know the winner. It was the Melon Man, Ross Chastain. Came from nowhere at the end of the race and managed to pull it off, stealing one from William Byron. And between those two, I mean, no one expected Ross Chastain to pull it off. At the end of the race, Chastain shared that it was more so of a mistake on his part for not for pitting too late. He said that he waited two extra laps whenever he was told to come in sooner. But that seemed to be what was the difference. William Byron held on to that lead. He got passed by Denny Hamlin in the teens. I believe they traded the lead 13 or 14 times. And Denny Hamlin and William Byron put on one of the best shows we have seen this season. But then overall, it was Ross Chastain who came in and he took the closers, Kevin Harvick's sponsor in Busch. That wasn't the sponsor on the one car last weekend. But I believe that Ross Chastain is now making a name for himself to be considered the closer at these type of tracks. You look at Kansas last fall and now Charlotte last weekend. He's someone who is able to pull off the win when it matters the most. But I want to now look at second place, William Byron. He looked really disappointed after the loss. Obviously, I would be too. He dominated. You see 283 laps led. He led basically that entire race. He was up front for most of the race. And I will say, you look at the bottom of the list, Kyle Larson finished 37th. Kyle Larson looked to have the fastest car at the beginning of the race. I believe that if Kyle Larson were to have been in it, I thought that Larson would have been too exhausted from Indy, but we saw how that ended up. I thought Larson was going to have an okay day. I thought he would finish in the teens. I just thought 1,100 miles is a lot on a driver, but he didn't get to run 1,100 miles, and he wrecked out of both races. You want to talk about the person who had the most disappointing day? It was Kyle Larson, and all the Kyle Larson fans who were there at Charlotte. At Charlotte, I arrived there about 5 hours before the race, and there were many, many Kyle Larson fans. I was talking to a couple of fans around me, a couple of people that just wanted to interact with me, and the odd thing is that everyone has known that Hendrick Motorsports has produced the most popular driver. They are the most popular team in NASCAR. But Chase Elliott has held that title. But I swear on everybody that was wearing a T-shirt, it seemed to be Kyle Larson fans that were outnumbering everybody else. Kyle Larson could now be the most popular driver. I don't know yet. Just because I saw all those shirts at the race doesn't mean anything. But it seems that Kyle Larson is definitely up there for sure, but I'm starting to think he might be the number one driver. But back to the results here with William Byron and then Denny Hamlin as well during the race. It was a great points day for William Byron. William Byron earned 65 points, and thanks to Kyle Larson's disappointing day, William Byron is now the points leader in the regular season standings. And you may ask, well, how come Ross Chastain isn't the one with all those points? Well, that's just how the point standings are nowadays. It's just how it is. And even though Ross Chastain won the race, look at what William Byron did. He won stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, and he did it at a great rate. The best part of the race, though, was whenever Carson Hocevar was there. Carson Hocevar, it looked like he had the third best car on the day. I thought that he was going to finish probably around third, second. I didn't think he was going to win. I thought it was going to be Denny Hamlin or William Byron, but Denny Hamlin's late mistakes cost him that. And then what happened to Carson Hocevar? Carson Hocevar blew his engine in the restart, and it cost him his day. It also cost Chris Buescher his day. And yesterday on his stream, Carson Hocevar shared that he basically did negative RPMs in his car for about 16 seconds when he meant to turn off the engine, and it just blew it up. And that's exactly what happened. And I mean, for myself, for a lot of fans there, especially a lot of people my age, the younger generation, a lot of fans love Carson Hocevar. He had a lot of people around him at the Chevy tent as well. Whenever he was doing an interview there, it seems that Carson Hocevar, I believe, has now made a name for himself, and I think at some point he will get a win. Before the season started, I believed that he would make the playoffs. He's now one spot shorter because of what happened with today. Chris Buescher, he didn't win the appeal, but he was only docked 30 points instead of 60 points in the playoff standing. So now Chris Buescher sits -6 at 17th place. Remember, you need to be top 16 to make the playoffs. But back to Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar made the race interesting. I remember him going into turn 1 3 wide. That's where I was sitting. And I just stood up. I was amazed. I thought that he was going to make it stick. He didn't. But between those three and Denny Hamlin, William Byron, and Carson Hocevar, and then to add on top of that, the fact that Amazon did a great job of coverage, I believe that this can go down as one of the best races in NASCAR's history because of the fact that the viewers at home, the viewers at the track, it's very hard. It's a very hard thing. We saw it at Bristol earlier this season to where the viewers at home and the viewers at the track believe it's a good race. If you look back at Bristol, the fans at the track said it was great because you got to see all this passing going on. But whenever you were watching the Fox broadcast, you only really saw the lead. I'm sure everybody remembers the final lap call whenever Kyle Larson came around, and it was like there was no emotion, anything that had happened. But I digress. It was a very good weekend for the sport overall. The NASCAR averaged 2.6 million viewers in the race. And for anyone who was worried about Amazon Prime costing NASCAR a lot of viewership, it did not. I also read that in the 18 to 49 demographic range, so your back half, your younger age, 18 to 29, sorry about that, NASCAR had its peak in viewership since 2022 on a race that was not on just your regular antenna on Fox or on regular NBC. But the final clip I wanted to show is one of the clips from me at the race. I wanted to show the 3-wide racing for I believe the stage 3 win. It was just really fun overall. I thought it was really neat. Sorry, it's vertical. My job, got to get some Reels content. But I mean, just look at it. This is what it felt like over the last 50 laps in the stage. I was amazed with what had happened. I thought that the race itself, I don't see why NASCAR isn't bringing a championship to Charlotte. I thought the race itself, there was no boring part. The only time it got boring was whenever William Byron, I believe it was in stage 2, I believe stage 2, 600-mile race, 400 laps, a lot's going on. But stage 2, he had an 8-second lead, and he just ran away with the victory. But whenever Denny Hamlin was in second place charging, he took the lead in stage 4, came back. William Byron came back, took the lead again. Denny Hamlin went down pit road. Him and Byron were neck and neck off pit road. But Denny Hamlin was told he did not put enough fuel in the car. Well, his team didn't, and that cost him his race. As you can see here, Denny Hamlin, he had to go, I believe, one lap down. Yes, no, he finished the race, but he finished it in 16th when it could have been a better day for him. I think that he was going to win. A lot of fans there. Another thing as well is that fans were really loud and not in a booing way. Whenever Hamlin took the lead, a lot of fans there were cheering him on. So I guess being more outspoken has helped him out as well this season so far. But I'm now going to turn to Nashville. The Nashville weekend was a weird one last year. It was a 5 overtime win for Joey Logano. He took the win, and that was kind of the turning point. If you remember, I talked about it last week to where the turning point could be the All-Star race. We saw Carson Hocevar. He did well in the All-Star Open, and then he was also performing well at Charlotte. I understand the Open, it's a qualifying race, no points awarded, doesn't matter. But it's still a checkered flag at the end of the day. and we see how he did. And I think Carson Hocevar, he's got another shot at these mile and a halves. So if you are a Hocevar fan, I believe that him being in the playoffs, maybe not based off of a win, but by points, is going to be what's going to happen for him. But back to the talk of Joey Logano and the momentum he had last season. He won the All-Star race, and then he won at Nashville. And this kind of pushed him towards that championship that he had last season. This is what kicked it off. This is what started it. This is the part of the season. These next couple of races, and I think it's so great. And like I mentioned earlier, Amazon Prime did a great job. But these are the races that kind of like solidify. These are your top drivers, and these are the drivers that, hey, they may have been good at the beginning of the season, but they're kind of falling off now. But I believe that whoever ends up performing well in Nashville, or who ends up winning in Nashville, is going to be a driver that you can say will be in the championship for. I know that's odd. I know that that's a very hot take, but that's what I believe. I think that, I don't think it'll be another 5 overtime finish, but I do believe that the winner of that race, the person who dominates, will end up being there at the end of the season in Phoenix racing for a title. If we go to look at last season as well, like I mentioned, it was Joey Logano. Remember, Ross Chastain was up there. Last week's winner. Ross Chastain won at Nashville in 2023. This is somebody to keep an eye on now. Trackhouse Racing has had an odd season. They've not been that good. Trackhouse Racing has struggled this year, but they now have the win at Charlotte, and maybe, just maybe, in their backyard, well, kind of their backyard in Nashville, this could be another good weekend for them. I don't think Shane Van Gisbergen's going to do well, but he did do well in Charlotte. He finished in the top 25 range, I believe. So a lot different than what I thought he would do. But you can look at Daniel Suarez, who's in a contract year. He's struggling. He hasn't won since that win in Atlanta, and that's in what was then NASCAR's closest finish. But he struggled. And for Trackhouse Racing to be able to find momentum last week with how excited Ross Chastain was, it was a great race overall for Ross Chastain, obviously. But that push at the end, and I think that's something we need to keep in mind, because this could be something that's just going to be a look ahead to the future, is that it could be Trackhouse Racing may start sleeping again. But near the end of the season, I mean, remember, you've got the race at Daytona. That's the cutoff race, and that will decide who's in the playoffs and who isn't. Maybe a Trackhouse Racing driver could sneak their way in there. Ross Chastain's in there now. Could another one make it in? But now for Nashville and Ross Chastain, why couldn't he go back-to-back at Nashville? Ross Chastain, like I mentioned, he has the win there. He's the 10th best average finisher. He has 2 top 5s, and he's led 144 laps there. So unlike what happened in Charlotte, Ross Chastain can actually dominate a little bit. He can actually own the racetrack, and he can be someone that will be up front. I wouldn't be shocked if he qualifies well and is up front for most of the race. Remember, we're at a point. William Byron is your points leader right now in the standings, and it's not because he's been so dominant in winning. It's because of all the stage points he has earned. And you look at Bubba Wallace, who's sitting in 12th in the point standings right now. It's the same thing. All of those points in all those stage points. And that seems to be what will decide the playoffs. I remember everybody talking about that new fastest lap point. It's not really done anything, but maybe it will. And if we can start seeing drivers start thinking of races in a points strategy type of way, then maybe guys like William Byron last week are going to say to themselves, hey, even though we're not taking home the money for winning or the trophy, we still are walking out here with 65 points, which if you were to tell anyone 15 years ago, they go, oh yeah, they won the race. But back to Nashville, the other driver I want to mention now is a turning point. I mentioned Trackhouse Racing with Ross Chastain winning. Maybe a Shane Van Gisbergen can steal one. Maybe a Daniel Suarez can take one as well. But now we go to RFK. RFK's had a good week now. If we look at the results from last week, and this is why I want to turn it to this week. Look at who finished fifth. Brad Keselowski, his first top 5 of the season. Was not expecting that. He made a post on, I believe, on X that he was saying if it was 100 miles longer, which a 700-mile race would be insane, and I think I'm all right with 600. But he said if that race was 100 miles longer, that car would have won. And I think that that's something that he struggled to be able to say. We saw him do well in Kansas whenever he wrecked in second, I believe. But maybe now we can turn to Nashville once again as another race that will turn the tide for him this season. But the other driver I wanted to mention was Chris Buescher. Like I mentioned earlier, his points that he's earned back, he's now 17th. And Buescher looked like he was going to do well in Charlotte, but didn't. Here's the only bad thing with what I'm saying about Brad Keselowski, though. He's 30th he's 30th in the average finish at Nashville. It's going to be difficult. This hasn't been the track that he's done well, but if you can spend a lot of time, maybe get something figured out, he could end up taking more momentum and keep going. This is all about, like I mentioned earlier, stage finishes. If he can keep earning those stage points, he might be able to get himself from the very bottom to whenever it comes time for Daytona at the end of the regular season. He could put himself somewhere in a position of making his way in on points, but it still will most likely be a win and you're in situation for him. And the final thing I wanted to mention for Nashville was the drivers I think you need to watch out for. The drivers I think will win. I mentioned Ross Chastain. I do not think he will go back to back. I'm sorry, Chastain fans. I just don't think he will. I do believe, though, that the man last week who had the worst week, it seemed, ever for motorsports is going to be the one who will bounce back. If you look at Kyle Larson has the best average finish, and Kyle Larson has done a great job of just forgetting everything. He just looks ahead, forgets what's going on. And if you want to tell a driver, forget about last week, I'm sure last week for Larson is the week that he wants to forget about. At Nashville, Kyle Larson has the best average finish in the Gen 7 era there out of drivers who are still active in the sport and full-time race the full thing. But he has three top 10 finishes, 2 top 5s. He's not led any laps, ironically enough, for someone who has 3 top 10 finishes. He's led 0 laps, but he's starting near the front and he's ending near the front. He has a 4.7 average start, a 5th place average start, and he's finishing the races at 5.7 at 6th place. So probably going to start 5th, probably will end in 5th. But regardless, if we are wanting to talk about Kyle Larson getting his 4th win on the season, Nashville is a place to do it for the 5 team. It's a great way to bounce back. It's another night race. It's going to be under the lights. It's a 6 p.m. start in Nashville, 7 p.m. Eastern. And I think that for a driver who is considered to be one of the best, to be able to turn it on in prime time is going to be what will happen for him. I mentioned the Denny Hamlins. He has the 4th best, and Chase Elliott has the 5th best average finish. But between those 3, it's 1, 2, 3 because of the name of Kurt Busch at the top, and he only ran the 1 race. But here's the odd thing. Remember last year, the 5 overtimes. I don't think it'll be that crazy, but Zane Smith, he finished 2nd last year. He found his way up there. I don't think he'll do it this season. But if you're a fan of the underdog, why not try to root for someone like a Zane Smith in the world? He easily, last season, it was awesome to see him finish 2nd. I know a lot of fans were upset about Joey Logano and didn't even want to bother looking at anything else. But with what happened with Zane Smith finishing 2nd, I mean, that's kind of one of those momentum turning tides. That's one of those things that I've talked about. But on the other end, I can mention Legacy Motor Club. John Hunter Nemechek. John Hunter Nemechek entered the weekend with back-to-back top 10 finishes on points-paying races in Charlotte in this season. And then He finished, I believe, top 20 in in the Coke 600. And for someone, I thought that Legacy Motor Club might have another day. I remember Nick DeGroot joining us a couple of weeks ago, and he shared the fact that he thinks that the wild card races this season are going to be your cookie cutters, your mile and a halves. And after seeing what happened in Charlotte, I'm starting to believe it. I'm starting to believe what's going on because we look at Kansas. We saw Brad Keselowski get up to second, someone who had struggled all season, and before he wrecked, I thought that he might have the chance to win. But we look at Charlotte as well. I mentioned earlier Carson Hocevar. The Spire team, they've not struggled this season. They've put on some great performances. They've done well, but it's been Carson Hocevar carrying the load. Michael McDowell and Justin Haley have been iffy at times. If you remember at Texas, Michael McDowell had that really bad block trying to stop Joey Logano, but it didn't work out for him. But the two teams that I think that you need to start keeping an eye on and maybe going, hey, one of these drivers is going to become a star at some point. It's going to be either Spire or Legacy Motor Club. It's a very interesting dynamic with what's going on, but those are the two teams that I believe within the next couple of years might be a Trackhouse, might be in the range of Trackhouse in 2022, or might be just up there as a team that every weekend we can look at a few of those drivers and go, these are the drivers that are going to compete. But I want to close it off with the driver that I think will win this weekend, and I mentioned it, and I hate to be so basic, so I'll give you two. I think it'll be Kyle Larson. I think Kyle Larson will bounce back, and I think Kyle Larson will end up winning in Nashville and be able to say, you know what, let's forget about what happened on Memorial Day weekend. Let's look ahead for the rest of the season. But the other driver I kind of like in this is Ryan Preece. I mentioned RFK. I've already mentioned two drivers. This is the third one. Now, with Preece, this is not me saying I think he will win, but I can just go ahead and say he should have a good day. Preece has the fifth best average. Sorry, the fourth best average finish among active drivers in the Cup Series right now. He has one top 10, which was a top 5. Excuse me about that, and then 2 top 20s. He's also been able to make his way up to the front of the field. He has an average start of 23.5, starting in 23rd place, but he's ending these races in 10th. These RFK cars are faster than those Stewart-Haas cars from last season, and I think that this is that this could be a race, like I said, one of those races that are becoming a wild card for these Gen 7 cars. This could be the race where Preece makes his way up into an automatic clinch spot. But like I said, I think Kyle Larson gets it done. I just don't see another driver doing it. I think that if Larson is the greatest driver that everyone says he is, then he's someone who should be able to have a good weekend, if not win. But the odds I want to get into now to close off the show and be done with the Nashville talk is your winners. Kyle Larson is sitting at plus 450 as a race winner. Ross Chastain is at plus 1100. He's someone that, if you like the value here, I don't think Chastain does win, but I like the value here because I didn't think he would win in Charlotte, and there's a reason why. There's 400 miles worth of racing on Sunday, and not just me sitting here and telling you what I think will happen. At plus 1100, I think that is a good value to finish top 10 as well. You can look down here. Carson Hocevar is at plus 130. If Carson Hocevar doesn't blow his engine up in Nashville, I don't see why he doesn't do it. That ride the Dente 77 looked fast. It was a great car, but whenever it got in the dirty air, it just couldn't make the passes on Hamlin or Byron. But Nashville should be a fun weekend. It should be very exciting. If you want to tune in for coverage, just stick along with the Bleacher Brothers X page or any other page you can find it on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. But I want to go ahead and just say thank you for joining. Sorry for being a little off, a little under the weather, but Tune in next week as I'll close off the Nashville talk, and we'll take a look ahead at another cookie cutter. But I want to thank you guys for joining, and you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.